Hey everyone, TNT here. All right, well, this has to be the most challenging, difficult, and disorganized builds I've ever done on a bike. The first kink in the chain was COVID. COVID really messed things up for me as far as getting parts out of the United States. The border got shut down, so I couldn't walk across and pick up my parts down there. I had to get my parts delivered to Canada, and the shipping costs were just astronomical to the point where the build just basically had to stop because I could no longer afford to be able to have the parts shipped up here. And I'm having no luck finding anything here in Canada. The second kink in the chain was being evicted from my old residence and having to go out and find a house. Now, although we did find a house fairly quick, and we were very fortunate enough to be able to get a mortgage on it and get in, and it has the facilities that I need to be able to work on the bike. It was right at the beginning of fall. We had Halloween coming. The weather was getting colder. We still had tons of unpacking to do, and then bam, Christmas is here. So I've been coming down to the shop whenever I can get down here and doing the little bits that I can. But now we're going to get right back into the build and try and get this thing done over the next couple of months. All right, so originally I thought about putting the whole thing together and dealing with this small piece right here later on after I had the bike assembled and having somebody just weld it up. But my concern is that when I get the airbox on, I'll show you what I'm talking about here. When I got the bike, this piece here was attached to the old muffler, and it has broken off this spot right there. It actually fits in here quite well. There, right there. It fits in there absolutely perfect. It'll be an easy weld job. Unfortunately, I don't have a welder, so I can't do it. And I thought about just getting it welded on later after I had everything assembled, but after putting the airbox in the frame and realizing how close it was going to be and how much heat I would either be generating through TIG or MIG welding in that area, I decided that I'm going to wait on this. So I'm going to take my frame in next week to work and have somebody weld it up for me. And then this area right in here, I'll probably just clean all the paint off and either powder coat it myself with a heat gun, or I will just spray it with some two-part paint. All right, so while I'm waiting to take that into work next week, I think I'll just move on and just kind of piece together the dog bone here and maybe hook the rear shock to it and then get the swing arm up here and attach some of the items to the swing arm instead. Bolt is not cooperating. Pretty sure that bolt is supposed to go through there, yeah. So let's just make sure that we don't have an issue here, which we do seem to have an issue. We just have to pull this cap off and have a look at what's going on here. I'm going to have to pull both of these caps off and slide this bushing out. So this bushing, for whatever reason, has a little obstruction going on. And right inside, so this bushing has a hole in it, and the idea is that the grease from the grease nipple on this bolt fills up this channel right here. Grease goes in, goes through the center of the hollow bolt, comes through that, fills up this little channel, fills up that channel, and then squeezes inside and coats the area between the bolt and the bushing, as well as the bushing and the bearing. Now there's a bit of an obstruction inside here. I'm not sure what it is, but this bushing should fit right over top, and it's hitting. Now these are brand new bushings, and I think when they drilled the hole in the bushing, it put a little lip on the inside. Have a look inside here. Yeah. Oh, that's very interesting. I don't know if you guys can see that, but up inside this bushing where that grease hole is, when they drilled it, it actually drilled through and kind of pushed out on the sides. And now my bolt will not travel through it. So I got to take a file and file the inside of that out. Feels like I've almost got it. But I mean, you can even hear it hitting. There's the outside where there's no hole. You can hear it. It's not really grabbing. And then right there is where that hole is. This is hardened steel, so it's going to be pretty hard to even file that out. All right, let's try it now. There we go. That's the way it should move in there. All right. Put those bushings back in there where they belong. And that one there. That's just my cap that's kind of hanging me up there. Which one was this? I think this one goes through that one the easiest. So that is the one that we will put in this location. And that's better. Okay, so we got a few things we're going to throw on the swing arm here. I got a brand new chain guard. This is an interesting design by Yamaha. They've got this piece that mounts on the side, and then they've got a roller that goes up front. Now this roller simply goes, I mean, right now I'll just have it sitting there, but that's where it sits, right there. And the chain just rides on top of that. This piece here goes on like this, right? Like that. And then this roller, or just guide, sits right there. And the chain runs over top of this and then over top of this roller, and that's what keeps the chain off of your swing arm. Interesting. The newer ones, obviously everybody knows, they have a wraparound that comes all the way around the front of the swing arm to protect it. It protects the bottom and the front, but this is what Yamaha used back in 1983. Not exactly sure how tight you're supposed to go with these. I know it's not going to strip out the frame or anything like that because it's got a good solid metal insert in it, but I don't want to crack the plastic either. Alright, so I got my frame back from work. I got this lower silencer tab welded on. It's something I missed before I got the frame powder coated. It was actually attached to the old silencer and I completely forgot about it. Anyway, took it into work, have a great welder where I work, and I had him TIG weld it back on here. He did a great job considering what he was working with and the thickness of this metal. What I'll probably wind up doing is I will powder coat this entire area on both sides. Then I'm going to come back with my vacuum cleaner and I'm just going to make sure that I clean off everywhere where I don't want any of my powder coat to go over top of the existing powder coat. just let it sit off to the side and finish curing and cooling. And we will move on to installing the tire on the rear rim. Now, when I was installing the front tire, I tried my new no-pinch tool, and I did not have that much success. And I wound up going back to using my regular spoons, these ones right here, and this tusk one, which is my favorite one, and I'll probably wind up getting a couple more like this because it just works so well. But I'm going to try the no-pinch tool again, and I think that it'll probably work a little bit better on the rear rim than what it did on the front rim. Front rim's a lot longer, and I think that the front rim's diameter is a lot larger. So trying to get that angle without hitting the anodizing on the rim was very difficult. And I actually did put a couple of scratches in the anodizing on the other rim. Alright guys, so I think the first thing that we're going to do here is install the rear shock onto the frame. It'll kind of balance it out a bit on my stand, which will enable me to put the forks back on the front. Now the other day I put this chain guard on, and it was mainly to just see how it would fit, and I didn't put any Loctite on it yet, so we're going to Loctite that up right now. Guys, so we're going to move on to putting in some of the frame plugs that this bike has. I've got 3 frame plugs here. I'm going to have to actually, pardon me, I have 3 frame plugs here. One of them you can no longer buy, and the other ones you can still get. I'll show you where the holes are here that we're going to put those in. So 2 of the frame plugs go in here and here, and then the other frame plugs go in right there, and then another one over on the other side, right in there. You can see this frame got a little bit bent right there. The actual frame plug that would go in there, I can't get one of those anymore. But if you look at the size of the tube, it's roughly, maybe a little bit larger than a handlebar tube. I mean, I think that, you're supposed to be able to literally just press them in. Oh, man. It just will not go in. I mean, I've got a bit of the powder coat, I think, on the edge there. So what I'm probably going to do is just take a round file, and I'm just going to round file a bit of that off. There we go. Now we're just going to tap it in there. And I guess that's how they're supposed to fit in there. Okay, so same thing. Another plastic plug. Let's see how this one's going to slide into that hole. See if we're going to have to... No, that one fits in there well. Frame plug is in. Okay, the next parts we have here are for the upper part of the frame. And these are, I think, mostly the tank and seat insulators. Goes right there. That would seem logical to me, but let me just quickly check my spec drawing and that'll know for sure where they go. Okay, so yes, I was correct. That is the location of where that one goes. And then we've got this one right here, which is slightly offset. And I just need to figure out which direction that this one goes in. It's got a little bit of a cut slant to it right there. So these can be a bit of a challenge to get on. You want to be very careful with these, or you can wind up basically peeling this whole section right off. And then these parts here, I do not think you can get them anymore. So start them off in the back, and then just very carefully with your screwdriver work your way around, pushing it in like that. These ones actually went in very easy. I've had ones on the Honda where the rubber is not near as soft as this, and I've actually torn the back off. These here are not new. These are actually off the original bike, so from 1983, and the compound that they use in this is still very pliable. All right, so after having a look at the drawings again, I've figured out that two of these go in here. Okay, so we've still got 3 left, plus the strap. Pretty much positive that 2 of these are for the side panels, and I'm guessing that I may even have a third one for the side panels. So I think that we'll just put these back into the bag. And the strap, I still haven't figured that one out yet as to where this goes. I may have to go back and look at my disassembly video to see where this was located. All right, so we'll go ahead and mount the electrical now. We've got the plug that comes to this side. This simply has a tab right there and an area in this rubber holder where it just slides on. And just like that, it just sits right inside like that. Okay, so after putting the CDI on, we'll install the coil. Now, looking at the parts diagram, there's supposed to be a part that comes down and hooks around the bottom of the plug wire, but I'm not positive that this is the original coil for this bike, or maybe they discontinued that part. I'll have to have a look through my parts. I looked at the original video when I disassembled the bike, and I didn't see anything like that on it, which leads me to believe that it may have been removed at one point, and this could be not the original coil, but you never know. It's amazing how partway through the year, different manufacturers will actually eliminate a part altogether because they determine that it's just not necessary. You definitely want to put Loctite on these bolts. This bike does vibrate a lot, and it will vibrate these right out of the frame. Okay, so now we're going to install the rear shock protector. There's more to it than just this. This is one piece that actually bolts to the dog bone down here. And I'm not sure if I can get it around this bolt. It is reasonably flexible. I would imagine it's probably supposed to be bolted to this or screwed to this prior to putting the bolt through, but it does seem to be pretty flexible. So let's just see if I can quite easily get it over top of the bolt. And yeah, it went around there no problem. Now the multiple slits, I would imagine, go on the bottom because of where it sits in here. It needs to be a little bit flexible in this area, and the single slit would go up towards the top. All right, so this is another spot where you're definitely going to want to use some Loctite. Although this one does have a flat washer and a lock washer, you are trying to hold a piece of plastic on. You definitely don't want to be losing one of these because they don't make these anymore, and you will have a tough time finding it. Don't go crazy on how tight you make these screws. Flatten out that lock washer, and that's about it. You don't want to be causing more and more compression of the plastic, or you could wind up cracking it. All right, so as you can see, I had to remove the shock. There's no way to get the airbox in with the shock in there. And I kind of knew that, and I think I mentioned it when I was putting the swing arm and shock on, that I think I'm going to have to take this shock out to get the airbox in. And of course I did. So the only way for this airbox to actually go in is to come in from this side. And it goes just like that, nice and easy. And it just lifts up, and over on the side over here it has like a little lip where it kind of sits in. Now this didn't require any new parts. I wound up having to powder coat the rear hub. These are the brake shoes that came with the bike when I bought it. They are original Yamaha ones. I'm not sure if they're from 1983. They could be newer. They were more than likely replaced. I have brand new shoes that I could put in it, but these are in absolutely perfect shape. I would rather just put these back in the bike, use them, and give the owners new ones, and he can replace them when he wants to. All right, so we're going to install the actuators now. Most bikes don't have dual actuators. If they have a drum brake, they've got a single actuator. And basically what it looks like in a regular bike is you don't have this post. You've got, or pardon me, that post down where the actuator is. And your brakes would come in on the top post and both be sitting against the actuator. And as the actuator turns, it pushes both of these apart up against the inner part of the hub. Yamaha, for whatever reason, decided they would go with a dual actuator, one on top, one on bottom. I don't know why. It actually does exactly the same thing as if you were to just run with a single actuator. So I'm going to put the springs on first because it's much easier to go like this. And you don't even need to use a pair of pliers or anything. You simply get your springs in. Whoops, pop that one out. Oh, look at that, we pop that one out again. There. Okay, so now we've got them on there, and you can simply stretch this apart like so. Beat it over that one, and then over here, oh, spring popped off again. Get that spring on there, and then make sure my actuator doesn't turn. And then just simply go like that. rather than trying to hold them there and hook the springs together. So there we go. We got the springs in. Both shoes are where they're supposed to. They sit kind of in a bit of a notch down here, and the same thing right there. There's a bit of a notch where the shoe sits in. A lot of drum brakes actually have a lip at the top here, and this just sits right underneath that lip. This actually has a slot. Okay, so that's all that's going to go on this side. We turn it over, and we've got these two little felt seals. Now, you can't actually buy these anymore, but they are just simply felt. So if you get the same thickness of felt, you can make your own. You could use a hole punch, or you could take a pair of scissors and cut yourself some. These are the original ones, and there's really nothing wrong with them. Once I cleaned them up a little bit, they were fine. So simply just place these felt seals, as they call them, back down in here. Okay, so now we put our spring on. The spring goes with the little hook part facing up, and that little tab goes down inside the hole, right like that. Then these two guys right here, normally there would be some sort of an indicator on here as to what the position of these would be. Now, placing this on here, it's pretty easy to get these two centered to each other. It's a little bit more difficult to determine on where this sits. Now, that would be at a full break right there, so obviously that won't work. And then if you get down too far, you know, you're just not able to get it in position. So you can see that as the cable pulls up, it will actuate both of the arms. And here's what is happening on the other side when we do that. You've got the top and bottom actuator moving. It looks like I might actually have one actuator moving earlier than the other. And the reason for that is because either I've got wear in this point right here, which is what it looks like it is, because you can see that movement right there. I got a bit of wear in there. And they give you an adjuster right here to be able to adjust that for that reason. All right, now because you are threading these bolts into aluminum, and you don't want to be going excessively tight because you could possibly strip it, you definitely want to use some Loctite. You can actually see when you tighten these bolts up, the gap between the teeth on the actuator and the arm close up. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for there to be no gap in here on the teeth of the arm. If you can see a gap in there, then you're going to have to tighten it up a little bit more, or you will definitely slip on it and it will strip. All right, so that's it for the rear brake, or pardon me, the front brake. It is ready to go on the rim and be mounted on the bike. Okay, well, even though I don't have all of the proper parts to be able to put the back wheel on, I think I'm just going to put it on there anyway. I don't have the sprocket right now. I got to order it. I am missing an O-ring for this part of the brake hub seal. But it's all got to come apart when I go to put the sprocket on it anyway, and for now it just kind of gets it out of the way, and we get to see a little bit more of what the roller of the bike looks like. Much better. And look at that, there we are. All right, well, you guys are getting a better look than I am right now. Let me get over here and have a look at how it looks. Okay, well, it looks pretty darn good to me, except for these scratches and a bit of a dent I've got in the rim right there, my nice brand new rim. And like I said, we'll talk about that at a later date. right, there we go. Now I can tell already that when I first set this rim up, I think I was a little bit off on my offset. Now it's not much, but it is enough that I'm going to have to correct it. The wheel should be sitting in the middle of the forks, and I think I'm out by probably about 1/8 of an inch of where it should sit. Now, although it probably won't make that much of a difference, it will drive me crazy that it's not sitting in the right spot. Okay, so this requires 4 parts in order to put this on. You've got your flat washer, which goes on the bottom, as well as your lock washer, and then your bolt. So we've got our lock washer, flat washer, and bolt. That comes through the bottom of the plastic, and then this piece here is supposed to sit down inside this little hole right here in the fender. And unfortunately, the hole is not the proper size for that to fit down inside. So I'm gonna have to get out my drill and match it up to the size that center is. And we're going to have to drill these holes out so that this will fit down inside it. Here we go. We're just going to drill this out now, and hopefully I can get it as centered as possible. This is the only issue with aftermarket. Front fender is on, and man, that looks good. It's definitely not as bright, or pardon me, is not as shiny as I thought the plastic would be. I might do a little bit of buffing to shine it right up. I'm not sure if Yamaha's plastic did have a real sheen to it, or if it did look like this, but I think I could probably buff that up to be a lot more glossy. All right, well, we will go ahead and move on and mount the front number plate, I guess. Now, I can tell you right now, on the back of the fork, it is very tight. Another thing that's interesting is that where it screws into the top, it doesn't look like this area here sits out far enough, and it's actually going to slightly bend it in. But these right here are definitely not wide enough to fit around the forks. I mean, I think you guys can see the diameter of that. That doesn't work out very well. I think what I'm going to wind up having to do here is right away get out my heat gun and just put a little bit of heat to this and open these up. All right, and that does it. I can see that it's definitely touching at the top of that piece. So it sits right down inside there. So I think I may stick a washer in behind this. I'm going to have a look at the way that this bolts up, but I'm pretty sure it's just got a bolt that comes through. There's no metal piece that pops into the back of that to take up any of the space. Okay, so I've got it on there, and I want to show you what I've got going on here. So if you have a look at the plastic there, you can see how it's bending in like that. That is definitely not correct. This is coming in contact with the triple clamp, and then because of that piece of plastic in the back being not long enough to butt up against it, it's causing it to pull in. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to make a spacer in order for that to work. So that's just life. Like I said, when you're dealing with aftermarket products, you sometimes have to adapt. All right, we'll go ahead and install the front brake cable now. This is an original perch off of this bike. I don't have the original perch for the clutch side, so I'm gonna have to try and get a hold of that. I do have the original lever from the clutch side, but I don't have the perch. I've actually got another brake perch off of some other bike. Now this lever is a shorty. It's not from this YZ490. It was probably an aftermarket purchase, but I've already powder coated it. I like the shorties on the front brake side, so I'm just going to leave the shorty on. When I do the clutch side, I'll more than likely put a full lever on the clutch side, because these clutches can be difficult to pull in, and I will definitely have trouble pulling it in with just 2 fingers. Now I did buy a new brake cable for this. Somewhere here. But I also have the original brake cable. Now the original brake cable for this bike is in absolutely perfect condition, so I'm not going to bother installing a new brake cable for it. It just doesn't make any sense. I'll just provide it with the bike when I sell it. Everything about this brake cable is still in perfect condition. All right, guys. Well, I was having difficulty getting the brakes to tighten up. Everything I tried just was not working at all. So, even though these original Yamaha brake shoes look to be in good condition, pad wear is not that bad. I checked it with the pads on these brand new EBC, and there's still at least 75 to 80% left on here. But I think what the difference is that this area right in here, don't drop my springs. What I didn't notice is this area right here has worn. And in doing that, it didn't matter that there was still enough life left in the actual pad part that wears. These had gotten so much closer that the pad was no longer coming on in contact with the drum at all. So, a little bit of a learning lesson there. Can't always get lucky and use those old parts that still look to be in good shape. So, let's see if this fits inside now. And yes, it does. And it fits pretty well too. That went in there not snug, but I could feel it touching, so that's a good thing. It's right where I want it. Let's see how it feels up here now. And the brake is pretty much right away. And that's going to be where I keep it for now until I take the bike out and ride it and determine exactly where I want that brake lever to pull into. Now here we have the rear brake lever. Got a brand new bolt washer for it. Now if you didn't watch one of my other videos, I don't know if I explained it or not in there. This cable right here is absolutely impossible to get for the YZ490. There may be some little shop somewhere in the middle of nowhere that has it, but I looked all over the place online and I cannot find an original. I can find aftermarket ones and they are slightly different. This cable here is off of an RM500. Now Suzuki made their pedals out of steel, and Yamaha has made theirs out of aluminum. This area right here on the Yamaha used to be about I would say another third larger than what it is right now. And what I wound up doing, because these pedals are easy to get, they're all over the place on eBay. You can find used ones in perfectly good condition. I decided to take a chance and take this metal down to the width of what this cable end fits on. Like I said, there's steel on the Suzuki, so it's a little bit narrower, and this cable end fits on the metal one, but the aluminum one, Yamaha made it quite a bit thicker, I would think, for strength and for wear purposes. But I just don't think that the amount of aluminum here is going to have an issue with being a third smaller. I think it's going to be fine, and if it doesn't work out, then I'm simply going to just go buy another one of these pedals, and then I'm going to somehow modify the end of this RM500 cable. Now, this RM500 cable is exactly the same length as a YZ490 cable, and pretty much of the exact same design. All right, so before we can go ahead and install the brake pedal, this is the location of where it goes right here. There's a piece of shaft or tubing, if you'd like to call it that, that this slides over, and inside the pedal we have a brass bushing. But before we put that on, right back here I've got a nut, and that nut supports this bolt right here, and what this bolt does is it stops this pedal from coming all the way back. Now, all right, that is all cinched up. A little bit of play in that. As you can see, that brass is a little bit worn out. Once the cable is attached and the return spring right here is put on, it will hold it up solid, and then it will have just this slight bit of movement here. All right, we'll move on to installing the rear fender now. I'm not sure if I'm going to have to drill holes out in this or not. They look to be the right size, but it's whether or not it's going to have the right fit. All right, so when I first got this bike, this section of the frame was bent really bad, and we did the best that we could to straighten it out, me and a guy at work, and we got it pretty darn close, I'm hoping. I haven't, check the distances between the bolt holes or anything like that, but I'm really crossing my fingers that everything's going to line up properly. So let's see what happens here. Things look pretty good on this side, and you know what? I think I'm going to get away with using the holes that DC Plastics has drilled out. Everything looks like it lines up pretty good, so let's grab some bolts and see what happens. I'm hoping that after bending that all back into shape that the seat sits proper as well. There's nothing worse than having that huge gap between your fender and your seat. Okay guys, so I've run into a problem. The bolt hole on the right hand side of the bike for the fender is stripped. So I'm just going to check the other ones out here before I remove the fender. That one tightened up good. And that one tightened up good. So two top ones and the left hand side of the bike all tightened up fine, but the one over on the right hand side is stripped. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to remove the fender, drill it out, and helicoil it. All right guys, so for anyone that has never heard of what a helicoil is, I'm going to show you. It basically replaces the threads that were in there to start with. You wind up taking a larger drill bit than the diameter of your original threads, your original threads in that hole, and you drill them out. Once you have those drilled out, you take a tap and you tap threads into that spot. Then you use this tool right here and this little guy right here. And these are 6mm threads that this tool will actually thread into the threads that were created by this tap. This is a special tap made by Helicoil. I don't think that it matches a thread pattern of a regular bolt. So you must use this tap for this device. You want to make sure that you keep this lubricated a little bit. It doesn't have to be crazy. I mean, we're making a very small hole. And we're already through. So on the end of this, there is a little tab. That tab must be facing inwards. And what you do is, this comes as 2 pieces. Simply take that out and make sure that your tab is at the top. You won't be able to thread it on if it's at the bottom. And then just simply thread this into it until it stops. This is a 6mm thread right there. Now you take this, slide it down inside, and this is also threaded in the end of this, and just start threading it in. It should thread in. There we go. If it's not threading right, you're going to want to stop, because this smaller rod will actually break that tip off, and you need that tip on there to be able to thread this in. Okay, so now what you want to do is you want to press this right up against that hole, and you slowly want to start turning this inner part. Now what that's going to do is it's going to start threading that Helicoil insert into the threads that we made with the tap. I'm just going to keep going here. I can see it coming out the other side now. Just going to give you guys a view of the other side. Now you can see the tab is sitting right there. We're just going to go a little bit further. And I'm going to stop right there. Just going to see how many threads I've got sitting out this side. I've got probably about 2 threads sticking out that side, and now I'm flush right there. Now what you want to do is unthread the entire device from that. So there, I've unthreaded it. So just take a little pair of needle nose pliers and just break that little tab off. And this tab breaks off really easy. There we go. Got it off. Okay. Now we take our bolt and we go like that, and in she goes. And that's how you do a thread repair with a Helicoil set. Looking at the back of the fender, everything looks true still. All right, I think that looks good. Next item I think we're going to put on will be the fuel tank. In this box here is the fuel tank that I restored back, gosh, it's been a long time. I mean, let me tell you, it's got to be probably about, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago. So let's get all the parts put on this and get it on the bike and see what it looks like. All right, now we'll install the final part for the tank, which is the air chamber. All right, guys, so we'll continue on now. We're going to mount the rear sprocket to the rear wheel. And unfortunately, I did not get the sprocket that I wanted. I got a little bit tricked on Amazon by the image that was displayed, and I did not read the fine print. I mean, I got a great quality sprocket in a JT sprocket, but I didn't get the design that I wanted, which was closer to the original. Nevertheless, I'm not going to send it back and try and get something that looks more like the original sprocket. We're just going to go with this one. Okay, so I received my new Motion Pro throttle tube the other day. We got a brand spanking new throttle tube. Let's just slide it over top and see how it feels on there. That feels really good. There's no binding whatsoever. Well, I just lost the bottom of my throttle tube housing. All right, so after just looking back at my camera and the angle that it was at, I think I missed the entire installation of the throttle tube here. I think that my camera was angled down in a way that you didn't even get to see it. Okay, so we've got everything kind of screwed down and in place. Now I'm going to put the grip on. I sometimes use glue for grips depending on how tight or loose they are for the handlebar or the throttle tube. In this case, the grip, which is right here, original Yamaha grips, maybe 1983, maybe older or newer, not sure if they still make these. But it won't even slide on the tube as is. So it's a very tight fit on there. Not going to bother putting glue on this. Simply slide it onto the tube and it should be fine on there. It shouldn't move at all. If for some reason I were to experience any movement, then of course take it off, put a bit of glue and affix it to the throttle tube. Okay, so the way that we do this is I do want to get this a little bit warm so that I can get this to stretch apart. Let's just see if I can get it to stretch around there as is. Oh, you know what? Look at that. I managed to get it started. So now what you simply do is take this and stick it inside here and give it a little shot of air. And then just keep hitting it on there. And there you go. We are almost on there. That is it. So we're going to do the same thing on this side. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to check the fitment of the grip on the handlebar. It's very tight, which is perfect. I don't think I'm going to bother putting any type of glue or anything on here. Something you could do though is you could maybe rough up the paint just a little bit with a piece of sandpaper, which will give it a little bit more grip than having this nice smooth surface on it. All right, and there we are. And that grip is not going anywhere. All right, now I think what we're going to have to do is remove the front number plate, and I'm going to have to cut some slots into it and figure out how I'm going to get this to form. I'm going to have to heat it up. They say you can heat this up no problem, and you can bend it around because this currently has no slots in it. I'm going to have to try and look online and match it up to what looks like the original Yamaha one so that I can get this bent around. You guys go, you get to see a little bit more of the bike and what she's going to look like. So no side panels yet, guys. I need some parts that are on their way, as well as I have not figured out which decal or decal, however you want to pronounce it, I'm going to be putting on the side panels. The ones I had did not work at all. They were much too thin. They produced bubbles right away. Look at the size of that back tire, guys. Not as big as the Terraflex that came on it when I bought it, but man, that thing is big. Just have a look over here onto this side. So I've currently got the crank in, getting the new rod put in it. I've also dropped my expansion chamber off with the same guy at Rutledge Enterprises. He's going to remove all the dents for me, and he's going to powder coat the pipe a satin black to match the silencer. So sorry this has taken so long, guys, for the bike to get even to this part. Life gets in the way, and well, there's not much you can do about it. But we are going to continue to move along as quickly as possible. Whenever the parts get here, they're going on the bike from now on. And I will try to edit these videos and get them out for you as quick as possible. And then sitting over here underneath some boxes is one of next year's projects. And yes, we are going back to Honda. All right, guys, so we're getting really close on getting the roller completely finished now, and then get moving on to the motor. As soon as the other parts come in, I'll get them on the bike as fast as possible and do another video. The motor, I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. It's extremely cold up here in Canada right now. I don't want a chance doing any painting in this cold at all. I have no way to really heat my shop up. I do have a small heater over here, but there's quite a gap on the garage door. I just don't think that it would retain enough heat in here to be able to paint. But we'll see how it goes, and if I do manage to be able to do that, I will do it as quick as possible so that we can get moving on the assembly of the engine as well. So I want to thank you all for coming out watching my video and, you know, hanging in here during this build. I know it's taken a long time, and I want it done as much as you guys do, and I want to get on to the 2021 project, bikes. There's a little hint for you. It's bikes and not just a bike. All right. Thanks for watching. Catch you next video.